Well, good afternoon, everybody. Today is the 15th of September 2024. Looking at the interior of a sleeper bus. Now, it doesn't matter where it is or whatever. It'll just give you that idea, but they have full-size beds in there. Now, the sleeper buses, or coaches, if you like, are used all around the world, even in places like New Zealand and the United States, and there are a variety of them operating through places in Asia, whether you're and India, whether you're talking about the Philippines and various other locations. Now, a couple of them that I know of don't allow full lay flat. They are about, let's call it 90% flat. They're almost flat in how a person lays down, but going by the so-called rail beds on the Spirit of Queensland train between Brisbane and Cairns, they have that type of seat on buses in Japan. Now, they have 2-in-1 seating arrangement, and they're called pods. They then turn a key and they become a flat bed. Now, that's one system. The system we're looking at is another. But now, many years ago, and I'm talking 1970s, my sister travelled on a sleeper bus between Melbourne and Sydney. She was not happy with it because you had to sleep beside a stranger. As you can see this in this illustration, there's two people kind of sitting up on the top of this bed. But that issue has been overcome with the rail beds in Queensland, where you have a 2-in-1 seating arrangement. So people travelling as individuals who don't want to travel with anyone else, or won't be travelling with somebody else, then have the seat and that which becomes a bed to themselves. Now, this is quite possible in buses, like I've just said. And in America, they have double-deck buses that have beds upstairs in what they call cubicles. They're like a little bit like illustrated here, where they're kind of an open situation, but you can see passengers on top and some passengers underneath. There's sets of cubicles. You just climb up into the top one, or you can go in the bottom one. An elderly person, for example, might, of course, go in the lower one. Now, they have curtains and so on to give them privacy and at night time. And then along the way they get out and, for example, my concept that I want to see introduced is a double-deck articulated coach, where the seats would be in the lower deck, and upstairs on the front half at least there'd be these cubicles. Now, if it's being an articulated, you go further along and there'd be a large toilet, which is essential, in my opinion, rather than a small bus-style toilet. You would have a lounge and some vending machines for snacks, but also passengers would have, say, for example, 6 menus to choose from, say, for dinner or for breakfast, lunch, and so on. The coach driver phones ahead to the roadhouse along the way and says, we want 6 number 1, number 3, so many number 3, so many 4, so many 6, and so on. And then by the time the bus arrives at that roadhouse, those meals are ready. They're picked up on a tray. They're already paid for by the passenger. They're not lining up like they are now with buses, and you're sitting up all night and all that sort of thing. That kind of thing would come to an end. You would arrive, pick up all the various orders that you've put in, eat those. You'd have time to go to the toilet, walk around a little bit, and so forth, and get back on board the bus. Now, with a 24-hour journey like Adelaide to Alice Springs, might mean there'd be lunch and dinner on the first day, and then breakfast in the morning on the next, and then they would arrive in Alice Springs. Let's say 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. in Alice Springs. Now, there'd be a connecting bus around 4 p.m. Sorry, around, let's call it 2 p.m. and that would go to Darwin. That'd be 24 hours later in that case too, so you'd have all your meals already organised. Now in the case of a 4-hour break, there'd be a number of showers available. People would be able to go for a walk and have a shower and just a bit of a stretch of the legs and so on, then get on the next service. Now of course this concept would be extremely useful in long routes that we've got in Australia, or even just Sydney Melbourne, Melbourne Adelaide, Sydney Brisbane, and Brisbane Cairns, and you'd have things like, as I said, up to Alice Springs and Darwin, and or possibly a reintroduction of bus service between Adelaide and Perth. And then of course going up to the northern part of the state, going up to an overnight service up to Port Hedland, or continuing even right through to Darwin would be a possibility. I just believe that this sort of system should be operated, and not only that, at some point there should be a national rail and bus network, and this would apply in the United States as well. I'd like to see Greyhound and Amtrak join together and have all of these buses that as I said, that are sleeper services. They'd also have standard buses for relatively shorter journeys. There might be connecting services as they have now with get off a train and go for 2 or 3 hours or whatever it might be, a relatively short connecting service. So that kind of thing applies here in Australia already, in New South Wales and in Victoria. There are a lot of services operating throughout those states. So I believe you've got the idea of what I'm talking about. I'd like to see it occur. I don't have any great concerns about which companies operate it. I'd like to see it become legal. If it's for some reason, if there's some regulation or whatever that stops it right now, that should be overcome. And we should have had this long time ago. So if you do your research, you'll find that these type of services operate all around the world except Australia. So anyway, I'd welcome any civil and polite discussion and questions, and just a general continue the whole issue on a bit further and see whether we can progress it one of these days. So thank you for viewing.